It's already 7 a.m., and you're still in bed. Get up and make me breakfast. My stepmother humiliated me and even slapped me in front of the whole family. My father remained silent. But today my stepmother will find out that this house belongs to me and that she no longer lives here. My name is Ashley Landon and 3 weeks ago, I shoved my stepmother Darla out the front door of the house she pretended to own and locked it behind her. She stood there in her pink slippers, screaming about betrayal, while I held the deed in one hand and my future in the other. It was 7:02 a.m. when Darla's sharp heels echoed down the hallway like a countdown. I knew what was coming. My bedroom door swung open, almost bouncing off the opposite wall. And there she was, Darla, in her satin robe and sour mood, holding a coffee mug that read, "Queen of Everything," as if it were a threat. "You're still in bed," she snapped, narrowing her eyes as if she'd caught me committing a crime. "It's already 7 o'clock. Last night I told you my book club was coming early. You have to make the eggs and iron the tablecloth. I didn't even look up. It's not my job." Without warning, she strode purposefully to the edge of my bed and ripped off the blanket in one swift motion. "Get up and make me breakfast now." I sat up so fast the sweatshirt I'd slept in nearly strangled me. My heart was already pounding, and the cold air in the room hit me like a slap. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of fear. "You're not my mother," I snapped. My voice cracked, but not from weakness. It was from years of swallowing words I should have screamed. "Oh, don't start with that again," she muttered as she left. I'd already thrown on some jeans and stormed downstairs just as Bill, my father, walked into the kitchen, still in his socks and with a blank expression. The morning sun illuminated the dust floated in the air like a divine spotlight, exposing how miserable everything really was. "She's being herself as always," she muttered, pouring herself coffee with hands that trembled slightly. "She treats me like a servant," I snapped back, yanking open the refrigerator. "She didn't even look up. Just do what she says, that's it. It's not worth the fight." That phrase again? I slammed the refrigerator door so hard the magnetic calendar fell off. "You always say that, and you always push," she said softly without looking me in the eye. Eggs sizzled in the pan as Darla barked instructions on how to fold napkins and cut fruit diagonally, as if I were being trained to serve her royal court. "Her friends will be here soon," came a noisy 9 a.m. woman who treated our house like a social club and me like a prop. As I stood by the stove, the spatula trembling in my hand, I felt that familiar spiral of resentment tighten in my chest, and beneath it something newer, stronger, resolve, because no one else seemed to remember, but I did. This house didn't belong to her. Not really. Not one day. Soon, nothing in it would belong to her either. For now, I let the eggs burn a little, just enough to make her morning as sour as mine. As she shrieked over ruined yolks and stomped off to touch up her makeup for the 5th time, I climbed the stairs slowly, dragging one foot after the other, counting the steps as if that could save me. At the top, I paused for just a second, then slammed my bedroom door so hard the frame rattled. Let her hear it. Let us both hear it. Let the house remember who it truly belonged to. It was late when I finally emerged from my cave, which was my bedroom, still half wrapped in the oversized sweatshirt I hadn't taken off. The morning had scraped something raw inside me, but by then, the day had turned quiet. Darla was somewhere with her raucous friends, probably drinking overpriced coffee and loudly, pretending to be someone important. The house was calm. I found my father, Bill, in the living room, slumped on the sofa as if it were part of the furniture, reading the newspaper, spread like a shield between us. The sports section on one side, the world disasters on the other. He turned a page. I stood on the threshold with a clean laundry basket at my hip. I had no intention of speaking. I really didn't. But the words just came out too heavy to hold any longer. "Why do you let her talk to me like that?" The newspaper didn't move. He licked his thumb and turned another page. "Dad." Finally, the newspaper came down. His eyes met mine. Briefly, just briefly, and I saw it again. That same tired evasion, the same expressionless surrender that had defined every conversation since the day. "Darla moved out 6 years ago. She's just doing the best she can. As she does the best she can, he treats me like a stray dog, like I'm some leftover project he didn't sign up for." He sighed, not defensively, just uncomfortably. "You just have to hang on a little longer." My fingers gripped the rim of the laundry basket. "That's your answer to everything." "It's not. Forever. You're almost done with school. Then you can leave and have your own Life. She'll be out of your way. I stared at him, blinking in astonishment. So, the plan is to wait until I leave. It's not ideal, he admitted, folding the newspaper in half with exasperating care. But it's easier this way. Easier for who? I asked softly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I turned and walked away before I could say something I couldn't take back. Something like, you were supposed to protect me. Back in my room, I threw the basket to the floor and sat beside him with my knees drawn up to my chest. For a long time I just lay there, in the dull glow of the setting sun filtering through the blinds. I picked up one of my favorite t-shirts and folded it slowly, mechanically, as if folding my own pain. When I was little, this room had been a warm place. Grandma made the curtains when I was 10, a faded blue with hemmed edges. There were still little flower pins stuck in the corkboard she'd given me for my drawings. She used to call this house the nest, her safe little nest. Now it felt like a cage someone else had moved into. I picked up another t-shirt, folded it, and stacked it. Hang on a little longer, she'd said, as if I hadn't held on enough already. As if every slammed door, every spiteful comment, every empty birthday, every whisper of she's not her real mother, wasn't enough. I folded socks next, then pajamas. Then a dress I hadn't worn since Grandma's funeral. I paused over that one. My grandmother's voice still lived in this house, in the corners, in the closets. Sometimes when I walked down the hall, I could hear her. You're my strong girl. You see right through people. But lately, I hadn't felt strong. I felt tired, like a visitor in my own life. By the time I finished folding, the light outside had shifted to that deep golden hue that made everything seem almost kind. Almost. I looked at the neatly folded piles of clothes on my bed and felt nothing. No pride. No comfort. Just that empty, lingering numbness that comes after years of biting my tongue until I was getting bruises. That's when I whispered it. I've missed you. Nobody heard me. Not really. But the silence answered. With something close to understanding. I opened my nightstand drawer and took out an old photograph. The one of Grandma and me baking cookies in this very kitchen. Her arms around me, both of us laughing. I was 9 years old. She had loved this house. She fought to keep it. She paid the mortgage herself when Dad's job went to peak. She never said it out loud, but I knew. I knew she wanted this place to stay in the family for me. Now Darla was reupholstering the dining room chairs and talking about painting the walls sage gray as if it were hers to claim. I tucked the photo under my pillow and lay back. I couldn't stop what Darla said. I couldn't force my father to grow a spine, but I could remember. And remembering, especially when no one else did, was a kind of power. The backyard smelled of vanilla candles and overwatered lawn. I'd strung the fairy lights myself, attaching them with zip ties to the curved wooden fence that Grandma had once painted redhead peacock egg blue. Some had burned out. I didn't care. It gave the yard a kind of wobbly charm. I'd spent the whole afternoon making poppy seed and lemon cupcakes from scratch with cream cheese frosting. Grandma Trice's recipe, she said, was the only birthday flavor she baked, and she wasn't wrong. It felt like something stable, something safe. Dad got out the Bluetooth speaker. I'd prepared a playlist of mellow indie songs, soft hum tunes that wouldn't offend the refined taste of giving. Not that I was going out to help. Just as the sun sank below the rooftops, my guests started arriving. 3 from school, 1 girl from work. Tritch, thankfully, was late as usual. But when I saw her red Jeep pull up to the curb, I exhaled for the first time all day. Hey birthday Phoenix, she smiled, carrying 2 pink gift bags and a 6-pack of lemonade, still rising from the ashes. Sort of. We put the drinks on the table and sat down on the patio. The sky turned indigo as the laughter grew, small and gentle. For a second, the air felt light. Then the back door creaked open. Darla stepped out as if she were inspecting the aftermath of a minor storm. Wearing her robe, a glass of wine in her hand, she scanned the crowd as if she didn't recognize any of them, and to be fair, she didn't care. She walked right past me and stopped near the cupcake table. So this is it? She asked aloud. This is the big birthday party. I felt the smiles around me stiffen. A girl glanced at her phone. Well, Darla. I guess when no one RSVPs, you get this kind of crowd. Trace's eyes flashed. We did please reply, she said coolly. We just weren't invited through you. Darla's eyes narrowed, then scanned Tris. As if she were made of fluff. Oh, she said with a smile that was too wide. You're the cousin, the one who still lives with her mother. Try raised an eyebrow. Is that a problem? No, Darla laughed. It just explains the outfit. My stomach churned. I looked around, watching the invisible thread that had held this party together snap one by one. By the time Darla called one of my classmates, a quiet girl named Lena, a little wallpaper ghost, the damage was done. First the girl from work left, then the classmate, then the second one. It was like watching sand slip through my fingers. In 20 minutes, only Trach remained, leaning against the fence with her arms crossed. She enjoys this, she said dryly. It's like theater for her. She humiliated Lena, I whispered. She wanted to humiliate you, Trach replied. They were simply caught in the crossfire. The remaining cupcakes were untouched. String lights whirred overhead like a whisper of apology. When Trach finally left with a long hug and a mumbled, "Do you deserve better?" I was left alone on the patio with 2 balloons half swaying in the breeze and half a cake, melting in the night's warmth. I cleaned up slowly and silently, as if trying not to wake a house that wasn't mine to call home. The kitchen was empty when I walked in. The clock above the stove read 10:42. The party had lasted a little over 2 hours. Darla was already sitting in the breakfast nook with a glass of boxed wine and a smug little smile. Bill was sitting next to her, staring at a plate of scrambled eggs as if they could tell him his future. Well, she laughed, swirling her drink. Your little party was a total disaster. I didn't reply right away. I put the leftover cake on the counter, left the used paper plates by the trash, and turned to face them. It was important to me, I said softly. She blinked in feigned surprise, lighting up her face. Oh honey, if that was important, you really need to raise your standards. Bill didn't look up, just silently cutting his eggs, chewing like a man afraid to taste anything. I looked at them both, her munching on crackers like she owned the place. Him shrinking into himself like maybe he didn't. There were things I wanted to say, things I rehearsed in my head every night. But instead, I picked up a fork and ate a piece of cake right there on the kitchen counter, refusing to let her have the last word. It tasted of lemon and salt. The morning after my so-called birthday party debacle, the house was eerily quiet. Darla had gone out for one of her interminable lunches, and Bill was outside mowing the lawn like trimming the edges could fix the cracks underneath. I didn't want to be there, not in the house, not in that silence, not with the lingering echo of his voice in the kitchen, laughing at my failure like it was the punchline of a joke. So I left with no destination, no coat, just my sweatshirt, sneakers, and that kind of emptiness that made my chest feel too big for my body. I wandered around the neighborhood like a ghost in broad daylight. The maples that lined the sidewalks dripped gold and red, the kind of Kansas fall my grandmother used to call fairy tale weather. Cool, vivid, and lonely. My feet took me nowhere. I passed the gas station, past the elementary school where I once played shuffleboard until my palms blistered. I passed the bakery that used to smell like heaven before it closed, and then I heard him. I turned around. Trach was on the corner outside the Café in Bloom, a paper cup in one hand, his car keys in the other, squinting. In the sun, her auburn hair was tucked under a cap, and she wore a denim jacket. Covered in enamel pins, tiny rainbows, sunflowers, a cat flipping the bird. Are you okay? She asked, walking toward me. I tried to smile, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. You look like you've been to a funeral, she said gently. Come on, sit with me. She led me into the cafe as if I could be blown away by the breeze. We took a private table near the back by the window, overlooking the alley. It was a quiet place, a small cocoon of warmth and espresso. Trace slid his untouched coffee toward me and stood up. You like oat milk, right? I nodded. He returned minutes later with a second drink, mine this time, and slid into the booth opposite me. I took a sip. It burns, but in a good way, like waking up. He didn't push, just sat with me, fiddling with his jacket sleeve until I finally blurted it out. He humiliated me in front of everyone on my own birthday. I know, Trach muttered. He made fun of the guests, laughed at me when they left. He told me it was a total disaster, as if I hadn't spent all day trying to make it nice. Try tilted his head. You shouldn't have to try so hard to make the people in your own house decent. It's not my house, I said bitterly. It's his. He looked at me as if I'd just said the sky was green. Ashley, what are you talking about? I shrugged. She's the one in charge. She remodels everything. She makes the rules. Dad just lets her. Try leaned in, lowering his voice. Ashley, that house is yours. I blinked. What? His eyebrows furrowed. Are you serious? You really don't remember? My chest tightened. I remember him looking around and lowering his voice even more. Gran left the house to you in her will, I said slowly, trying to make the memory match the words. She said it would stay in the family, that it would always be my home, but that was just something she said to make me feel better. No, Treyas repeated firmly. She put it in writing. I was there when the lawyer read the will. I remember the exact words. The house at 238 in Stredwood will pass exclusively to my granddaughter Ashley Landon, to be held in her name upon reaching the age of 18. That's what it said. My stomach churned. That can't be right. Dad never said anything. Try gave a dry laugh. Well, of course, because it doesn't benefit him to say anything, especially now that Darla has turned your life into her little kingdom. But it's not like I've ever seen any documents. There's no title deed or proof. Have you ever looked? He asked gently. I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth was, I hadn't. The idea that the house could actually be mine, legally mine, felt too big to bear. My heart raced just thinking about it. I pressed a hand against my chest as if that would slow it down. Try reached across the table and placed his hand on top of mine. Grandma would never have allowed this to happen. She said no, if she were alive. She knew what it was like to give her away. That's why she left her to you. My voice came out in a whisper. I'd forgotten. Tricia nodded slowly. Well, maybe it's time to remember. Outside the window the wind picked up, scattering red leaves down the alley like tiny flags in a revolution. The sky had already turned navy blue. By the time I left the house that night, a bouquet of fresh peonies wrapped in brown paper clutched in my arms like a secret. I didn't tell Dad where I was going. He was in the living room watching something noisy and pointless on TV, the screen's glare flickering on his glasses. I doubt he would have noticed if I'd said anything anyway. As for giving her away, his laughter echoed down the hall as he talked on speakerphone to someone he called honey. It wasn't my business, not anymore. The sidewalk was cold under my sneakers, the air sharp enough to make me zip my sweatshirt all the way up. Autumn in Kansas always felt like a turning point, as if the world were holding its breath between warmth and frost. The smell of chimney smoke wafted through the air as I drove past family homes, their windows lit in gold, families huddled inside. I used to imagine myself in those houses when I was little, pretending I belonged to one of them for just a minute. A safe, warm place where no one made me feel I had to earn my place at the table. The cemetery wasn't far, just past the old train tracks and down a gravel path that wound between sugar maples and crumbling stone angels. I found her headstone easily. I always did. Beatrice Landon. Beloved mother, grandmother, gardener of all that is good. The stone was simple, like her, with no marble angels, no pretentious quotes, just her name, and the truth of who she was. I knelt and placed the peonies at the base, unwrapping the paper gently, as if I didn't want to frighten her. Hello, Grandma? I whispered, removing the fallen leaves from the stone. My fingers trembled, but not from the cold. I brought you your favorite peonies. They had them at the market today, almost as if they knew I needed them. The night air enveloped me like a coat made of silence. I forgot. I admitted it. I forgot what you said about the house, about it being mine. My voice broke on the last word. I cleared my throat and tried again. I thought I was going crazy. I let it convince me that I didn't belong here. That this house, your house, could belong to someone else just like giving it away. I shook my head, tears burning behind my eyes. I forgot that you saw me when no one else did. The floor was cold beneath my knees, but I didn't move. I'm sorry I let it take over everything. I didn't know I was allowed to fight back. I always felt that if I pushed too hard, something would break. And maybe it will. But maybe it's okay. The stars were peeking through now, faint and twinkling, like Grandma's Christmas lights that used to hang on the porch year-round just because I liked them. I've missed you, I said softly. Every day. I miss the way you used to hum while you cooked. I miss the way you braided my hair so gently I'd fall asleep in the chair. I miss the safe feeling in your arms. Even when the rest of the house was a mess, you made it feel like home. I laid my hand flat on the cold stone. I just wanted someone to say they were proud of me. A breeze swept through the cemetery, whispering through the trees like a murmur. In my mind I heard her voice again. You're my strong girl, you see right through people. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I didn't feel like a burden, or an afterthought, or a problem to be managed. I felt like myself. Asley Landon, granddaughter of Beatrice. The girl who knew how to make the perfect lemon glaze, who remembered every story she'd ever been told, who used to fall asleep on the living room rug because she felt safe enough to do so. That girl was still here, buried under years of being ignored but not disappeared. I tilted my face toward the sky. The stars twinkled above, scattered and stubborn, refusing to disappear. Like me. When I stood up, my knees ached, but my spine didn't bend. I left the peonies on the grave, and walked back through the cemetery, the leaves crunching under my feet like silent applause. Tonight I remembered, and tomorrow I would find the proof. The clock on my nightstand read 12:21 a.m. I lay on my back, eyes wide open, my heart still settled somewhere in the cemetery. This strange calm I had felt near Grandma's grave was slowly dissolving, devoured by the chaos seeping under my bedroom door. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, the dull thud of someone knocking over a piece of furniture and not caring about fixing it. The living room was alive, filled with shrieks and the familiar sound of Darla's distinctive barking cutting through everything. A pack of full-bodied, wine-fueled women, in heels. I'd brought them back without asking. A group of women from her yoga class, I guessed, always wearing high buns and lip gloss that smelled like peppermint schnapps. I once heard them call me the girl of the house. Not even Jastra, just the girl of the house. I pressed my palms to my eyes and told myself to let it go. Just one more noisy night. I could find the deed. Soon. I could take action. But then another shriek came through the wall, followed by a high-pitched chant of shots, shots, shots. Someone yelled with laughter. A glass shattered, and something inside me tilted. I sat down, pulled my sweatshirt over my tank top, and walked down the hall in my pajamas and socks, my heart pounding as if I were about to do something rebellious and wild instead of demanding basic respect in my own home. The house reeked of white wine and burnt cheese. The TV blared music videos while the Darling crew sprawled around the living room as if they owned the place, one on the coffee table, another wrapped in my father's old wool blanket with her feet propped against the wall. I stood there a moment too long, unnoticed, invisible again. Then, I cleared my throat. Excuse me. 3 heads turned. A woman blinked at me as if I were part of the furniture that had suddenly spoken. Could you please turn it down? I asked firmly. It's past midnight. Darla turned to me slowly, a wine glass in her hand, her lips painted the color of dried blood. She smiled. The kind of smile you feel down your spine. Oh, look, she slurred. Sleeping Beauty is awake. I didn't respond. I must have been yelling too loudly during your little self-pity party yesterday. She continued in a honeyed tone. I guess you're still sensitive. One of the women snorted. Another whispered something behind her hand, and they both laughed. I clenched my hands into fists inside my sleeves. I'm asking nicely. Just please. Turn it down. Darla stood up, crossed the room in 2 slow, deliberate steps, and stopped right in front of me. She wasn't tall, but with heels and hatred, she seemed to tower over me. You live under my roof, she said, each word sharp and crisp. You have no right to tell me how loud I can laugh in my own living room. It's not you. The slap came out of nowhere. Quick, hard, stinging. A gasp from one of her friends. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." But no one moved. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. But I felt the sting spread across my cheek like a fire blooming beneath the skin. Darla tilted her head, still smiling. Next time you want to play grown up, try buying your own house first. Then she turned to her guests and raised her glass. Through the thin walls and even thinner skin, laughter erupted. I backed away, my legs like rubber. My vision narrowed. I turned and fled down the hall, not bothering to close the door behind me. Inside my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, trembling, not from fear, from fury, from shame. I touched my cheek where her hand had landed. My skin throbbed there, a physical mark. For the invisible ones she'd been leaving for years. This time it wasn't just a comment or a Sneering smile. It wasn't just another party I wasn't invited to. It was a line crossed, and I wasn't going to let her pretend it hadn't happened. Not anymore. The slap had faded into a dull morning heat, but the memory of it burned hotter than ever. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My eyes puffy, my cheek red. My sweatshirt crumpled from a sleepless night. My lips were chapped, my hair messy, but my jaw was clenched. Something had changed. It wasn't anger. I'd known that before. Anger flares up fast and dies faster. This was resolve. I pushed my hair back and nodded to the girl in the mirror. You're not a piece of furniture. You're not invisible. And this is still your home. I went back to my room, rummaged through the drawer where I kept my files and pulled out the thin, crisp envelope Try had given me later that evening after our coffee. He'd left it with a single word: proof. Inside were photocopies of Grandma's will, notarized, dated, official. Underlined in yellow was the line that changed everything. The house at 238 and Stredwood will pass exclusively to my granddaughter Asley Landon, my name in ink. I stared at it for a full minute, my heart pounding as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff. Then I picked up my phone and looked up a real estate agent. I made 3 calls trying to find one who wasn't completely booked. But when Carla answered, crisp, direct, and somehow warm, I knew she was the one. Hi, I'm Carla Mendez, she said. How can I help you today? There was a pause before I spoke. I wasn't used to asking for things. I'm ready to put the house on the market, I said. My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't back down. I inherited it. I have the paperwork, it's mine, and I want to sell it. A pause on the other end. Okay, she said slowly. Then with growing energy. Okay. Let's schedule a showing. I'll bring the paperwork, and we'll go from there. We agreed to meet at 3 that afternoon. By 2:55 I had vacuumed every nook and cranny, stuffed the dirt from giving her away in her closet, and scrubbed the kitchen counters until they shone like armor. Exactly at 3, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Carla DeP there. Early 40 seconds, dark jacket, sleek haircut, clipboard in hand, and eyes that scanned everything as if she were already evaluating it. Asley asked. I nodded. She smiled. Let's do some magic. I stepped aside and let her in. She moved purposefully through the house, taking notes, murmuring about square footage, lighting, and the potential charm beneath the clutter. I followed beside her, explaining that it had been updated, that it hadn't, and that window frames still creaked in storms. She paused at the fireplace, tapping her pen against her lip. This place has good structure, she said. People are going to see that. The moment felt surreal. This was the same living room where Darla had laughed at my birthday cake, where she'd called me pathetic. Now I was being assessed for viewings, photographed as something worthy of appraisal. We were halfway through the showing, halfway up the stairs when it happened. A door creaked open at the end of the hall. Darla, her hair in a messy bun, her robe slipping off one shoulder, mascara smeared under her eyes like unearned bruises. She froze at "See you." What is this? 3 words sharp enough to pierce drywall. Carla blinked in surprise mid-sentence. I turned to Darla slowly, my heart pounding, and said it clearly. My property. That's what this is. Darla took a step forward, her face contorted. You don't make decisions like this without telling me. You have no right to bring strangers into this house. I don't need your permission, I said calmly. I have the title deed, I have the will. This house is mine. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked between Carla and me, unsure where to unleash her fury. I'm going to call your father. Call whoever you want. I turned to Carla. We'll finish upstairs now. Carla looked at Darla, then at me, and nodded a small nod of approval. Go ahead. We walked past Darla as if she were a piece of furniture. And for once, she was the one who stood still, stunned, while the house moved on without her. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. After Carla left, I sat in my room half expecting Darla to burst in with some dramatic threat or a wine-fueled barrage of insults, but she didn't. Instead, there was a long stretch of silence until I heard the garage door open. Then, close, muffled voices. Not just one voice, Darla's. I crept to the top of the stairs and stood just out of sight, leaning slightly toward the vent that led down to the garage. Her voice drifted up like smoke. High-pitched, frantic, desperate. She brought a real estate agent here, Bill. A real estate agent? A stranger wandering through my kitchen, my bathroom, as if I were a tenant in a rental. Didn't even ask. There was a pause, then the sound of something scraping, probably his boot on the concrete floor. "I don't understand what you want me to do about it," he said, his voice low and tired. "Stop her," Darla snapped. "Tell her she can't just sell the house like it's hers. She's just a kid, Bill. She's playing dress-up with a power she doesn't have." "She's 20, he said quietly. "She's not a kid anymore." Darla gave a bitter laugh. "So you're just going to sit back and watch her destroy everything? I've invested years here, years. And now he thinks he can erase me like I'm a stain on his pretty picture." "Did you know this was Beatrice's house?" he retorted. "You always knew. That doesn't mean he has the right to throw me out." Another long pause, this time the kind that means more than any words. "Go talk to her," Darla finally said, her tone tense. "Make her stop." The door slammed shut. I ducked back down the hall and slipped into my room, my heart pounding. I didn't sit down, I didn't move. I waited. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, there was a knock. Dad came in, still wearing his garage jacket, the smell of sawdust and motor oil clinging to him like a second skin. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, his hands in his pockets. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. I met his eyes. Without flinching. "I'm selling what's mine." He blinked, as if the words had physically struck him. "You can't just do that." "I can," I said. "And I am. Grandma left me the house. Dad, not you, no. To give it away. I have the will. Carla has already started the paperwork." He rubbed his jaw with one hand, his eyes scanning the floor as if maybe the answers were hidden in the carpet. "She didn't want it to be like this," he said. "No," I agreed. "I wanted this house to be mine because I knew how things would go if it wasn't." His gaze hit me again. "She wouldn't want you to kick us out. She wouldn't want me to live like this. Humiliated, ignored, beaten down." That word hung in the air, like a stone thrown into water. Beaten down. He seemed affected. "Did she hit you?" I didn't say anything. He looked at me for a long time, then took out his phone and walked to the window. "I need to call Gerald," said your grandmother's lawyer. I watched as he dialed with trembling fingers, put the phone to his ear and said softly, "Hello, Gerald. It's Bill. I need to ask you something about Beatrice's will." There was silence on my end, only the sound of his ragged breathing, his hand trembling slightly. Then, finally, he spoke the words, "Are you sure?" "Without a doubt." A longer pause. "Okay. Thank you." He hung up. He turned to me. His face seemed empty. "Older. It's true," he whispered. "It's all yours." We stood there in silence, the weight of it settling between us like fresh snow. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. For once, he didn't tell me to hang on. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the kitchen, as if it had forgotten what kind of house it was illuminating. I stood at the counter, slicing strawberries with deliberate calm, the sweet, sharp scent in the silence. The deed was neatly folded in my pocket, though I didn't need it anymore. I had memorized every line behind me. Footsteps sounded softly. On the wooden floor. I didn't turn around. Asley cooed Darla's voice. Cloyingly sweet, as if she'd been bathed in honey and guilt. I kept cutting. She moved closer, slowly, almost cautiously. Her robe was tied, tighter than usual, her lipstick barely visible. A performance of vulnerability. "Honey," she said again, resting a hand lightly on the back of the chair. "I think we both know this has gone too far. I mean, putting the house on the market, that's not necessary." I put down the knife and turned to face her. Calm. Unblinking. "I have a visitor in 2 hours, I said. Please clear the mess." Her mouth tightened, but didn't break, not yet. "You know, we've had our differences," she tried again, her voice softer. Now, as if I were a frightened cat she was trying to coax. "But I've always treated you as if you were mine." I looked at her for a moment, then simply said, "No, you haven't." Her lips parted as if she were going to object, but the silence between us was too thick to break through. I walked past her and headed to the hallway closet, taking out the vacuum cleaner. "I'd like the floors to be clean before the buyers arrive," I said over my shoulder. "They'll be here at 11. And that was it. No fighting, no yelling, just clarity. By 11, The house looked better than it had in years. The windows sparkled, the cushions were fluffed up. Lemon cupcakes cooling on the counter filled the room with a welcoming feeling I hadn't felt since Grandma was alive. Carla arrived first, clipboard in hand, her jacket as crisp as ever. "It looks fantastic," she said, inspecting the living room. "Are you ready?" I nodded once. More than ready. The first couple arrived 10 minutes later, a young pair with a baby on the way, full of questions and curiosity. I guided them through the house with quiet confidence, pointing out the original hardwood floors, and the way the sunlight fell perfectly in the afternoon. Darla sat in a corner wrapped in a blanket like a sad movie extra, dabbing fake tears with a handkerchief, and letting out soft sobs every few minutes. Her eyes followed me like a ghost in a gothic novel, waiting for someone to ask her why she looked so tragic. No one did. The second visitor, a woman in her 50s with paint swatches tucked into her bag, barely glanced in Darla's direction. She asked about property taxes, the age of the roof, and how many owners the house had had. "Just one," I said. "My grandmother, then me." Darla made a soft smothering sound, but Carla gently intervened. "And Ashley has all the property paperwork ready to hand over." We moved through the bedrooms, the hallway, the backyard. Each room felt more mine with every passing minute. By the end of the second visit I could feel it. The house was shedding its old skin. Every step I took erased the years I spent silently folding laundry and swallowing words that bruised as I walked down. When the door finally closed behind the last buyer, I stood in the foyer with Carla, the scent of cupcakes lingering like a memory that chose to stay. "You handled it like a pro," she said. I smiled, small but real. "I've waited a long time to be heard." The sunset lit the sky like fire behind the trees, casting long golden lines across the hall floorboards. It was that time of day when everything seems almost too beautiful, like stillness, just before a storm that she knew was coming. I was standing by the front door, glancing through Carla's notes about the viewings. Both buyers seemed serious. Either offer could change everything. I should have felt nervous. I wasn't. I felt clear-headed. The sound of heavy footsteps came from behind. Bill moving purposefully for once in his life. I turned to see him standing there in his worn boots and work jacket, his hands clasped as if he'd made a decision about something and was terrified to say so. He looked from me into the dining room. Darla was standing by the table, swirling wine in a glass she hadn't asked permission to open, talking loudly on the phone about how difficult it is to live with people who lack gratitude. As if on cue, he hung up and turned to us with that mocking smile he wore like war paint. "Well, the circus is quiet now," he said. "Will more strangers be coming over today, or can we just walk around the living room without an audience?" His voice was high-pitched, but bored, as if he were still pretending to be in control. Bill took a deep breath, then exhaled. And then, the impossible. "That's enough, Darla," he said. Silence. Even the whir of the refrigerator seemed to stop. Darla blinked in astonishment at the sound of her husband, developing a spine in real time. "I said," he repeated, louder now, "enough." Darla tilted her head and let out a harsh, high-pitched laugh. "You," she said. "You tell me what's enough now. That's unbelievable." He turned to me. "Let me guess. You egged him on to this. You whispered in his ear between cupcakes and your little parade of open doors." I didn't say it quietly. He figured it out on his own. Darla took a slow sip of wine, dragging her gaze around the room as if she were still the queen of everything. "Bill, you want to do this now? Throw away everything we've built together. For what? This little rebellion? Do you really think she's going to take care of you? Like I did?" "I think," he said gently, "that you stopped caring about any of us a long time ago." She snorted, throwing the rest of her wine down the sink with a clatter. "You two are unbelievable," she snapped. "Do you think you can just erase me? As if I haven't held this place together while you two sat around feeling sorry for yourselves." I took a step forward, slow, calm, steady. I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and let the cool, clean evening breeze in. I looked at her. "This isn't your home anymore." Darla froze. "Excuse me, did you hear me?" I still said quietly. "No shouting. It's over. You don't live here anymore." She turned to Bill as if she expected him to laugh. He didn't. "I'm not going anywhere." Her voice starting to crack. "You can't just kick me out." But I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked over to her, took the wine glass from her hand, put it on the counter, and placed my hand gently, deliberately, on her arm. "You have to go." She tried to back away. But not fast enough. With a firm movement, I guided her to the door. She stumbled once in surprise, her heels catching on the carpet. When she reached the threshold, she turned back. To Bill. Despair flashing across her face. "Are you really letting me do this?" He didn't answer. And that silence, that was the final blow. I stepped forward and closed the door. I didn't slam the door. I simply closed it cleanly. The end. Through the glass, I saw her. Standing on the porch, stunned. Her robe billowing in the breeze as if she didn't know how she'd gotten there. I didn't look away until she did. When I closed the door firmly. My father still hadn't moved, but he was watching me. Really watching me. And I think for the first time since Grandma died, he finally saw who I was. No, the girl of the house, not the problem, the owner. The porch light hummed softly above my head, casting a pale glow on the front steps. As she turned away, her face twisted with fury. "Ungrateful brat," she yelled, her voice cracking. "This house was nothing before I came. You think you're in control now? You don't know anything about what it takes to run a house." She pounded on the door once, twice. The glass rattled, but I didn't flinch. Behind me, Bill stood still in the hallway, watching. He didn't speak, didn't move to stop her. He just stood there, small in the doorway, as if he were finally letting go of something he should have let go of years ago. "You'll regret this," Darla shouted. Her fists clenched at her sides. "Both of us." I looked into her eyes through the glass, calm, unblinking, and slowly reached for the deadbolt. My fingers trembled, but didn't hesitate. The lock clicked. Final. Darla's voice rose again outside, a string of words too bitter to be kept. But, as the porch light flickered and steadied, she realized no one was listening anymore. I stepped away from the door, breath ragged in my chest. Behind me, Bill let out a long sigh. More like a slow-motion collapse. He rubbed his face with one hand, then looked at me, not like a child, not like a burden, but as if I were finally reaching the place I'd been all along. "It's about time," he muttered, "that someone did what I couldn't." I nodded once, tears stinging but refusing to fall. "I will not allow this house to be a place of cruelty ever again," I whispered. "Not while I'm in it." Outside, Darla's voice faded into silence, swallowed by the wind and the night. Inside, the house breathed. For the first time in months, it was silent. Not the oppressive kind of silence like shame, but the kind that allows you to exhale. Peaceful, safe hours. The knock came just after 9 a.m. the next morning. A soft, polite tap. Not the furious banging of the night before. I didn't rush to answer it. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, making pancakes for the first time in months, feeling no need to rush or justify my existence. The silence was no longer hollow, it was mine. Another soft knock. I let the second pancake bubble completely, before turning off the heat, and walking slowly to the front door. When I opened it, there she was, dressed in a suit, her hair brushed, her lips bare, her clothes wrinkled as if she hadn't slept. In her hands, a small floral purse and her favorite blanket. She didn't look like herself. She looked like someone trying to become someone else quickly. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. I leaned a shoulder against the doorframe without saying anything. I just swallowed. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," I realized. Her lips met. "Ailey, I know I've said things. I've done things that weren't kind." I bowed my head. "Not kind." That was her version of an apology. She tightened her purse strap. "But I've made mistakes too. And I'm trying to be better at owning up to them." I didn't speak. I let the weight of silence stretch out until she filled it. "I'll leave," she said. "I will. I just need a few days to figure out where to go. I won't get in your way. I'll stay in the basement or the garage if I have to. You won't even notice me." There was a time, not so long ago, when I would have said yes, when my automatic response would have been to make room for other people's comfort at the expense of my own, but not now, not after all. "You're not staying," I said gently. "But I'm not selling anymore either." That made her blink. "You won't." I shook my head. "This house isn't just bricks and windows. It's roots. It's memory. It's what my grandmother built so I would always have a place where I didn't have to earn love to deserve peace." She looked at me as if she didn't understand the language I was speaking. "I've decided to keep it," I said, "but I'm keeping it for myself." A breeze blew across the porch, lifting her hair and carrying with it the faint scent of the band of peonies she had placed in a vase by the window. Darla nodded once, slowly and uncertainly, then stepped back. "I'll have my things out by tonight." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just said, "Take care," and I closed the door. Not forcefully, just with purpose. I stood in the hallway a long moment afterward, my hands still on the doorknob, my heart steady. Then I turned around and went back to the kitchen, where the smell of pancakes lingered, and the sunlight through the curtains seemed like hope. Things were going to be different now. Because I said so. The kitchen smells of lemon zest and warm vanilla. Grandma's signature scent, resurrected by my own hands. It's been 3 months since Darla left. 3 quiet, steady months that feel like I've been mending my life one sunrise at a time. The walls are no longer cold and stark. I painted them a soft blue, like the inside of a red petit four egg. Triss helped. Of course. She brought bagels and a playlist, and we laughed until the rolling pins slipped out of our hands. That was the first day I felt the house belonged to me, not just on paper, but in spirit. The living room is filled with mismatched chairs and colorful mugs. Now I've started a small home bakery. Nothing fancy, just cupcakes and cookies and warmth. Neighbors come by to pick up orders and stay to tell stories. The kids sit on the porch swing, and sometimes I even hear music again. My rules are simple. Kindness first, take off your shoes, and no one raises their voice unless it's out of joy. Even Dad drops by sometimes. He doesn't say much, but he stays longer each time. He brought me a new stand mixer last week. He didn't say why, he didn't have to. Once a month I walk to the cemetery with a fresh bouquet of peonies. Kneel by my grandmother's gravestone, and tell her what I've built. I tell her the oven is temperamental, that the lemon glaze still gives me trouble, and that I no longer let anyone interrupt me when I'm talking. I used to think that silence was strength. Now I know that boundaries are what keep peace alive. And finally, I'm home. That was the end of my story. But one thing still stays with me. My father knew for years that giving it to me was hurting me, and yet he chose silence until the very end, when he finally stood by my side. Did he do the right thing by waiting so long to act, or was that moment too short and too late? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.